Hi, and welcome back to the Maybe I Can podcast, the podcast that reminds you that your next chapter can be your best chapter, even if you can't see just how that is yet. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, you might notice if you've been listening to the show that things are a little bit different. There was no catchy music or intro playing because I am back doing this by myself without Transformation Talk Network, Talk Radio. And I want to share with you my journey a little bit with this. I was with them for about a year. Prior to that, I did the podcast on my own for about a year. And there were a lot of pros of having a professional network, being on a professional network and a professional radio show. But one of the downsides that over time that I found, and I it was causing me to not enjoy podcasting, and this is exactly why I left, nothing to do with them, but just the parameters, number one, of having a live show, that it had to be taped. And it didn't have to be, but I think it was better being live than pre-recorded. So every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, I would have to show up. And every once in a while, I did pre record something, but for the most part, that wasn't the case. And it tied me down to, I have a full time job. So sometimes, even though most of the time I was able to schedule it that way, it didn't always work out that way. It was also a lot of stress being live, even though I really, when I'm not live, I hardly do any edits because I want it to be authentic. And sometimes I pause and sometimes I say an and all the things, or right, or like, or I don't know, all the things. I don't want it to sound fake because that's not at all who I am. But that 30-minute, my show was 30 minutes long. So I had to work within those parameters. And I feel like sometimes that stopped me or caused me to maybe, I felt, ramble on about something that I didn't need to because I was so worried about hitting that 30-minute mark. And so now, back by myself, I can record when I want. I'm recording this on Saturday afternoon at 4:30, looking like a hot mess. So if you're watching on YouTube, sorry, but for me, it's more important to get the content out there when I'm able and it's on my mind than with caring about how I look, because I don't want to say I don't care about how I look, but this is me, right? Just like you. Sometimes we look good, sometimes we don't. Sometimes I wear makeup, sometimes I'm dressed up, sometimes I'm not. So this is me back raw. And, sometimes I'll be talking for 15 minutes and sometimes 25 and maybe sometimes 40. I have no idea. But all I know is that being back by myself, it kind of gives me that freedom. And I was thinking, boy, I don't know if I'm enjoying this podcast. Maybe that means it's time to stop. When I realized, instead of stopping, why don't I really think about, and for me, journaling, well, what is it that I don't like? And it was those parameters. So here I am, you and I back together, and whatever happens, happens. All right, let's get on to today's topic. I want to ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling into all the worst case scenarios? Like your brain is playing this never ending game of what if, and somehow it always is doom and gloom? I don't know about you, but that seems to happen to me quite often. Anytime, it could be about my kids, it could be about a decision that I've made or I'm making, something that I'm scared about, and I can talk myself in or out of anything, really. Can't we all? It's all such a head game. Why do we always think about the worst And what would happen? And instead, we flipped that script and started to believe that instead of the worst case scenario, that it could actually turn out better than we expected. Wow, imagine how amazing that would be. I think about when I had to make the decision about leaving my career as a CPA and moving from New York to New Jersey to become an insurance agent, and moving to an area in New Jersey that was quite rural, very different from where I grew up, very tight-knit community that I was clearly not a part of because I was just moving into it. And not to mention that I knew not one thing about insurance. I mean, not one thing. At that time, when I made the decision, I think I was about 30 years old. And, I was one of those people with insurance. I just did what my mother said, or I just continued on my auto insurance policy with what she had. And when people, would ask me a question if I got a new car, I'd be like, just keep everything the same. I had no idea what any of that meant. And here I was leaving a job that I was very comfortable and secure in after 10 years of working with the same firm to embark on something new. Of course, when I agreed, I was engaged to Gary, who was a salesman. He sold building supplies and plywood and lumber, clearly nothing to do with insurance, but he was very comfortable with selling, which I was not. And that's how kind of the decision was made, is that we could do this together. And he understood the sales side and I understood the business side. We had no idea what we were in for. And we moved and we couldn't afford to live on our own. So my friend was kind enough to let us rent free, live in her basement, which was amazing. But it was super stressful. We lived about, over an hour away from where our office was. Our training back then was not great. And so I'll never forget when we opened up our doors and the first person came in and they said they were buying a home and they wanted homeowners insurance. And luckily, Gary just had the gift of kind of BSing. And he did that with the guy and he said, we'll get back to you tomorrow with a quote and blah, blah, blah. And the guy left and we were like, what the heck do we do? How do we do this? We had no idea. It was terrifying. I was so afraid of selling somebody the wrong thing or not enough coverage. Like I was beside myself. Not to mention that we had inherited some clients from an agent who had retired. And every day people were calling and screaming at me, thinking that I had stolen their business because their son had actually opened up an office as well. But of course, they didn't realize the company made the decision of how the retired agent's book of business was split up. And so people were calling and yelling at me and telling me they were leaving and they were going back to the sun. And I lost about 500 clients in the first 3 weeks. I cried every single night. I ate myself to death. The stress was unimaginable. And in my mind, the scenario was, what if I wind up with no clients, no money, no anything? I'm not going to be able to get my job back in Long Island as an accountant. And what if this was the biggest mistake of my life? And I felt like we were married at that point for about a year, and I felt like I had kind of dragged Gary into this whole thing. And I didn't want to let my friend down because she was the one who had gotten us the opportunity and, allowing us to live there rent free. The pressure was intense. I have to say, looking back, I think it was the most pressure packed time of my life. And in the end, and it didn't happen right away, I have to say, it probably took about 18 months or so to really kind of settle in. And then, of course, with each passing month, year, each new scenario that was thrown our way because things were always changing and different laws, rules, and catastrophes, honestly, which is what you deal with in insurance, were thrown at us. And so every day was just a steep learning curve. And 30 years later, I can say that I have never been more grateful that I stuck something out, that I got past those what ifs, got past those fears, because really my insurance agency and my insurance career has been one of the biggest gifts of my life. And it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened if I had given in to all of those fears. And it wasn't easy. I don't even remember if I ever thought about the best case scenario at that time. My default was always the worst. And, you know, if that's you too, don't feel bad about it. It's not like we have some kind of personality flaw. It's actually biology and psychology. And so we should feel kind of empowered that it's not our quote unquote fault. And I think I talked about this in another episode, an episode on fear, because kind of these topics are very, they're relatable. They're related to each other, I should say. Our brains are wired for survival, not happiness. And it had to be that way when we were cavemen, right? Thousands of years ago. It's what kept us alive, is not, what can I say? It led us to protect ourselves from those physical threats, from the lions eating us, from whatever else was out there lurking. And so now in modern day times, we take that, and what it does, it often leads to us overreacting to uncertainty, expecting that we're going to fail, expecting we're going to be disappointed or rejection. And it's a form of protecting ourselves, right? I can also think about, and I've talked about this, like this fear of being judged when I first posted a social media video. And then when I first posted something without being prepared or not looking my best, fear of being judged or doubting ourselves with a job interview, or when you first start a relationship. I I can think about always having that what if scenario when it came to worrying about my kids. As my youngest son is now getting ready to graduate from college, I just think back to when he first went. Oh my goodness, the fear. What if he doesn't make friends? What if he doesn't get along with his roommate? What if he has nobody to sit with at meal times? What if I never worried about him not doing well in school, because academically he was very strong, but it was more about the social aspect of everything. What if he can't figure out, I don't know, how to plug in his laptop? That I really wasn't worried about that, but literally every single thing that you could think of. What if I didn't teach him? I didn't feel that I had really taught him to be independent. What if he couldn't rise to that occasion? Even after 2 years, when he moved with his friends into an apartment, I thought, now he's going to be responsible for his own meals. Does he know what to do, how to cook, how to shop? I don't really give him that training. What if he starves to death? Even though, come on, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I guess maybe what if he just kills himself by eating too much junk food? All of this worry, you think that you're preparing yourself, right? Like, you're already going to experience it. You're going to worry about it ahead of time. So you'll be prepared when that bad thing actually happens. And I can tell you that it's not true. You think that you're going to be safer by running through these scenarios in your mind. You've already figured it out. And I can think about when my husband Gary got his diagnosis that he had incurable blood cancer. In my mind, come on, let's be real. What was I thinking? What's going to happen? How's he going to die? When's he going to die? How am I going to feel? What am I going to do? And tried to put myself in those situations and figuring it all out. And oh my gosh, the mental energy the stress, the emotion, I can tell you that none of that prepared me for what actually happened, how it actually went down, and how I felt after he died. No worrying, no trying to play out the what if, every single scenario. None of it did any good. You know what? All it did was make me live through it or live through different scenarios that never even happened. Before it happened, it's like I had to experience it twice. I want you to think about something that, I don't know, last year, last month, recently, that you were deeply anxious about. How did it actually turn out? Was it as bad as you feared? I don't have the statistics in front of me. In one of my presentations, I know it's a talking point. I think there was a study done, and I don't remember, but it's something like approximately 85% of the things that we worry about never happen. And out of, let's say, that 15%, it's such a small percentage. Again, let's just say it's 3 to 5%, that if they do happen, they're not as bad as we expected them to be. And how does it happen? It's like that. What if you have one negative thought and then that triggers another negative thought? What if I don't get the job? What if I never get hired? What if I lose all my money? What if I lose my house? This spiral is so powerful, but so is our ability to catch it. And I think that it takes time, and the more practice that we have, the faster we are able to catch it. I don't know if it ever goes away, especially since it's something that is ingrained in us as humans. But our ability to stop ourselves, catch ourselves, and say to ourselves when you notice, is this fear? Is this scenario? Is this fact? Or is this something I'm just making up in my head? Because as we know, chances are we're all making it up in our heads. So, what if, and I think that I heard another podcast mention this, and I think when they were talking about it, I noticed, and I wish I could remember because it wasn't that long ago. That's why I'm talking about it today, because it was on my mind. What I was thinking about at the time. But I realized I was doing it. I was catastrophizing. And how come we never think to swap it and use the what if in hopeful, empowering ways? Like, what if this turns out better than I ever imagined? Which is really what my whole insurance career happened. What if this experience helps me grow into exactly who I'm meant to be? For me, my speaking career started with a volunteer job where I had to get up and speak in front of 150 people. And I was so terrified that I didn't agree to take the president position because there was no way. Fear was stopping me. And when I finally decided not to allow it to stop me anymore, and I got up and I spoke in front of those 150 people, and I saw the impact my message delivered and got that feedback after my talk was over, I thought, wow, that was amazing. And I want more of this. I think that I have a gift for this. And if I hadn't faced my fear, I never would be talking to you right now. I would never be speaking on stages. I would never have probably written books or explored anything that I've explored over the last decade. And it was only because I faced my fear. Here's another one. What if something amazing is right around the corner waiting for me? You hear all these stories and you think, Mel, I don't know what you think. I shouldn't say that. Sometimes I think, oh, lucky them, right? That can never happen to me. Of course it can happen to me, and it can happen to you, and it happens to all of us. And I'm sure it has if you look back at times in your life where something exciting and unexpected happened to you out of the blue? All right, I'm going to give you a little exercise. If you possibly can right now, if you're sitting down or at a desk or with your phone, or if not, come back to this later, this part of the podcast. I'm about 20 minutes in. Oh, I guess I'm really like on that 30-minute mark. I guess that's built into my DNA now. Anyhow, I want you to write down 3 times when something in your life turned out better than you expected. You got it? Write down 3 times in your life that something turned out better than you expected. It could be something small or big, a trip, a conversation, a relationship, an outcome that you feared that surprised you, like I just described. Our brain needs reminders that the best case scenario is just as possible as the worst. Kind of reminds me of my maybe I can list. Something similar that I've talked about before, which is writing down all the times that you thought that you couldn't do something and you actually did. Same thing, similar thing. So write down 3 times that something in your life turned out better than you expected. And I would say to you, just like the maybe I can list, keep that list somewhere accessible and keep it going. Keep adding to that list. And when you find yourself in that what if spiral towards fear and catastrophe, pull out that list and remind you, oh no, it does not have to be that way. It's so much better if I think about what if the best thing happens, the best possible outcome. Something else that you can do is you don't have to feel confident to act confidently, which is interesting. So, if you were confident, what would you do differently today if you assumed that things were actually going to work out? Maybe it's sending an email, making a call, walking into a room that scares you, but you walk in with your head held higher with confidence. The more we try and control the outcome, which, oh man, I am so guilty of that. It just feels like, let me think of everything that I can do. Oh, I've done this so many times. And I have to say, especially in my kids' lives, as I was just reminiscing about something with Sam, my oldest son, and thinking about when he didn't get a part in a middle school play. And I remember, I didn't even tell him this, how I went crazy and, went to the school and went to the principal and because there was a lot behind it. It wasn't just a mom who felt like her kid was the most talented. It was more about that I felt because of his special needs that he was being passed by because maybe he was a little more challenging to deal with than the person who was cast in the role. And the more we tighten our grip, we block the magic. I have to remind myself of that every day. I don't think I'm a control freak, but I'm pretty darn close. And letting go isn't about giving up. It really is about opening up to possibilities. Maybe there's possibilities that are even better than we imagined. And if we're just holding on, trying to control everything, those possibilities are not going to be able to come through. Fear is natural, but it doesn't have to be in charge. Most of our worries, as I said, they don't happen. And I am begging you to flip that script from what if all goes wrong to what if it turns out better than I expected. Try that exercise. List those 3 things. List more things than 3 things. So let me ask you, what's one area in your life right now where you're expecting the worst? Come on, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. And now think about how would it feel to flip that script and imagine it turning out better than you ever dreamed. I want you to keep thinking about that best case scenario over and over and over again, as much as you can. Journal about it. Close your eyes and picture it. Feel it. It'll happen. I'm telling you, once we start to think about the exciting possibilities that are out there and leave our fear behind, our lives honestly change because we're not walking around weighed down by all the catastrophes that we think are waiting for us. Instead, we're flipping our mindset and thinking about all the beautiful possibilities that are waiting out there for all of us to experience. So I am asking you, please, I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear, if you feel like sharing, I'd love to hear, what is it that you've been worried about, thinking about the worst case scenarios, and how can you flip the switch? Flip the squid. Flip the script, flip the switch. I can't even say it. You know what I'm saying. Let's start telling ourselves a better story. Okay? Is that a deal? I'm going to do it. I want you to do it too. And until next time, I want you to keep believing in what's possible. And don't forget, I know that maybe you can. Talk to you next week.